Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Mindful Midlife Crisis podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with your family and friends. We will do our best to put out new content every Wednesday to get you over the midweek hump. If you want episodes to be downloaded automatically to your phone each week, all you need to do is hit the checkmark, subscribe, like, or follow button, depending on what podcast format you're using. While you're at it, feel free to leave our show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words so more people like you can easily find our show. If you're really enjoying the show and you want to help us out, feel free to make a donation to www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. That's www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. You can also access the link in our show notes. We use the money from these donations to pay whatever expenses we incur from producing the show, but ultimately, we record this show for you. So if you keep listening, we'll keep recording and releasing new episodes each week regardless. If you'd like to contact us, or if you have suggestions about what you'd like us to discuss on future episodes, feel free to email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. Thanks again for listening. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis, a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Join your hosts, Billy and Brian, a couple of average dudes who will serve as your armchair life coaches as we share our life experiences, both the good and the bad, in an effort to help us all better understand how we can enjoy and make the most of the life we have left to live in a more meaningful way. Take a deep breath, embrace the present, and journey with us through the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. I'm your host, Billy, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Brian, on the bass. Brian, how you doing over there, man?
I'm stimulated, Billy.
Ooh, why stimulated?
Because I just got back from Las Vegas.
Oh, that is definitely going to stimulate a human being right there. What did you do to stimulate yourself while you were in Vegas?
What didn't I do to stimulate myself in Vegas? It's Vegas, you know? You know what's funny about Las Vegas now that was not that way before? Because I've been to Las Vegas a lot now. I mean, I go probably... Pre-pandemic, I was going 8 times a year.
It's one of your favorite cities, is it not?
Oh, God, yes. I love gambling. I love playing poker. I love doing the craps. It's just, there's shows to do. There's live music. There's anything you want, Funny, down on Fremont Street when we were there, Las Vegas doesn't, somebody says, get a live band. No. Vegas is like, no, we're not going to get a live band. We're going to get 3. And they have them all playing at the same time on Fremont Street. So as you walk down, it's like you hear country and then the pop guys and then you're at the rock guys. It's pretty cool, though. But yeah, we saw a UFC fight, too. So that was really incredible. Saw Nunez tap out, which was unheard of. The arena was just electric.
Yeah. So I don't know when this episode is coming out. I think it's coming out in March. So if people are like, the Nunez fight was way back in December. Yes, we're front loading all of our episodes right now. But yeah, Brian, you were at the Nunez fight and what an upset.
It was a huge upset. And the arena reflected that. It was so loud during that fight and building up to that fight and during that fight when they would have exchanges, because UFC, obviously, they're squared up and they're dancing around, but then boom, 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 there's flurries of punches. And every time those flurries would happen, it was deafening. Like, it hurt. It had to have been 130 dB in there. It was just crazy.
As you were watching them, did your time working out with Delico James come true a little bit?
Yes, and I discovered that those fighters are much better at doing what I was trained to do than I am.
So probably a good thing you weren't in the ring.
It's second nature to them, and I'm like, I'm still got to think about it when I'm dodging and stuff. Not those guys, man. It's innate, and you can tell in some of these fighters that it's just, it's built into them. They've done it so many times, it's automatic, and it's quite incredible. And fast. That's another thing I didn't realize is how fast these athletes are. Like, you see it on TV. It's the same with football. You see football and you're like, oh, that's nice. But when you're actually standing down there on the field, like I've gotten a chance to stand on the field for an NFL game. Randy Moss actually caught a pass right in front of me against the Seahawks. And these guys are moving. You don't really gain an appreciation for how fast these guys are until you're standing there in front of them. And we saw Joe Rogan too. That was cool.
Oh, nice. Did you pitch your podcast to him?
It was a little tough. I was a little far away from him, but he was probably 100 feet in front of me.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, it's fitting that you just got back from this UFC fight where people are showcasing their athletic talent, because I feel like one of the hardest things for people, particularly our age, or maybe even just any age, is to really embrace fitness or to make fitness a consistent part of their life. So we decided to bring on Aaron Boike. Aaron has been an ACE certified personal trainer for the past 13 years. He has a bachelor's in kinesiology from the University of Minnesota and is a running coach and ultra running coach with USCA. Aaron is also a dad, husband, business owner, and accomplished trail and ultra runner. He's completed over 40 races at or beyond the marathon distance, including 5 100-mile races. Where do we find these people, Brian? This is amazing.
Wait a minute. Am I to understand that you've run 100 miles in a single sitting?
More than that. And through the mountains, yes.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a lot of fun. You should try it.
That's amazing. I don't think that doesn't sound like fun to me.
That does not sound like fun whatsoever.
But kudos to you. I mean, that is incredible. I don't think there's many people that can say that, honestly.
Just this year, he completed the Aaaro 100, a 100-mile foot race with over 42,000 feet of elevation gain.
Oh, my gosh.
And at an average altitude of over 10,000 feet, and is widely considered one of the toughest running races on the planet. I'm exhausted just reading that sentence. That is phenomenal. Aaron, let's give Aaron a hand. Welcome to the show, Aaron. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And here's the thing, just knowing Aaron like I know him, because he owns Performance Running Gym with his wife, Isabel, and that's where I go work out. I know that Aaron is extremely humble. So these accomplishments, I'm going to tell you, they're absolutely amazing. But I know you, Aaron. You're just gonna be humble about it.
Normal people can do extraordinary things too.
Listen to this guy. I love it. I love it. So, Aaron, when we have our guests on, we like to have them share the 10 roles that they play. So, what are the 10 roles that you play in your life?
Yeah. So I picked first father, husband, business owner, coach, runner, outdoor enthusiast, musician, mountain man, craft beer aficionado, and morning person.
Okay, we're going to get to the 3 that you're most looking forward to in the second half of life, but there are definitely some things here that have caught my attention. Let's start with craft beer aficionado. What are your go-to craft beers?
Oh, man. I just, by definition, I avoid getting the same thing twice if I can. There's so much out there now, and one of my favorite things to do is just constantly have something new in the fridge. So I love our local breweries around here, but I also am a big West Coast guy. I spent a lot of time in California and Seattle and all of Washington State over the last couple of years, and then also Colorado and Utah. And there's just so many great breweries. So I find that I really try to avoid having the same thing in my fridge for more than 1 week at a time. And, being a fitness enthusiast too, I limit myself typically to one a day so that I can focus on my big goals as well.
But I think that's important for people to hear, that as a fitness enthusiast, you still enjoy a beer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think that's important for people to hear, that you don't need to restrict yourself. You can enjoy in moderation, right? So I'm going out to Seattle, Redmond, actually, in January. I'm going to be there for a month before I go to Thailand, and I'm going to take a little road trip down to Portland. What breweries and craft beers should I try on my way down there?
So the Alaskan Brewing Company is actually based out of Seattle, Alaska, or at least they have a tap room in Seattle. They've always got great stuff and lots of good stuff there to try, so that would be probably the first on my list.
Got it. Alaskan. Got it. Okay. I'm going to give that a taste. So another thing that you put down here is musician. Obviously, that speaks to Brian and me, because I like to think I'm a musician. Brian is actually a real musician. What do you dabble in?
Yeah, so it's dabbling now, but actually until I was really, big into the fitness industry, that music was my life. I grew up a guitar player. I played since I was 6, and I played in rock bands right up until I was about 22 years old, when I actually started my first real business venture and kind of had to start making some decisions as to what I was going to do with my limited time resources. But yeah, I went to an arts high school. Guitar was my career path until I found fitness. So if I wasn't here talking to you about fitness, I might be here talking to you about my career working as a professional musician, because that was the original goal.
That sounds fantastic. So we had Greg Scheinman on earlier this season, and he is in a rock band down in Houston. And now we have you, Brian. We are building what could truly be the greatest dad band of all time right here.
I think Dad Rock is ready to make a comeback, and we should be that vehicle by which it comes screaming back.
I wholeheartedly agree. So speaking of dads, you said one of the roles that you're most looking forward to is being a father. I believe you have 2 children, and you said earlier that you are going through a difficult transition phase at this point because they're pretty young.
Yeah, so we have my wife and I. My wife her name is Isabel, and then we have my son Killian and my daughter Emmy. And Killian is 3, Emmy is 2, and they kind of went through this angelic phase when they were 1 to 2 years old, and then things start to change, and then they start to get really bad, and they start to get a mind of their own, but they still can't communicate very well. So it's just a recipe for disaster. You throw potty training into the mix, and yeah, it's an adventure every day, that's for sure. But I love it, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's I think when I think about things I'm really looking forward to in midlife, I think about being able to share my passions and my world with my kids, and that's the thing I look forward to the most.
So one of those passions that you have is being a runner, and that's another thing that you're looking forward to in the second half of life. And clearly you have run these ultra races. We're going to get into kind of your fitness journey here in the next segment, but tell us how you got into the ultra running.
Yeah, so my foray into running was actually straight into ultra running. Just as a fitness enthusiast, kind of in college, I would run sprints and stuff on the track inside at the field house, and it was just kind of I never ran more than a mile. Like, honestly, up until I was 22 years old, I don't think I ran a full mile outside of high school gym class. And there I even failed. I couldn't run in 12 and a half minutes because I kind of grew up a chubby kid and couldn't run that fast. So my foray was kind of directly into ultra running because I think we're going to talk about this later. I actually came from more of a powerlifting background, met some runners that ended up being personal training clients of mine. And I really just kind of fell in love with this idea of being able to explore the world on my own 2 feet. Like, that was really exciting to me. And it seemed like ultra running was the best way to do it, because otherwise you're, limiting yourself to 10K at a time or a marathon at a time. But I knew this guy who was out there running 100 milers, and I was strength training him in the gym to help him do that. And I thought, wow, like, imagine the cool places I could see if I could experience 100 miles on my own 2 feet.
So just for the stupid people, me, what's the difference between running and ultra running?
So basically, the only difference is the duration and distance. So
okay.
Ultra running
so it's
is
just longer races.
Yeah. So ultra running is just literally defined as any race beyond the marathon distance. Largely the marathon's kind of considered the ultimate pinnacle for most people, for most runners. Ultra runners are the people who no longer see that 26.2 as a limitation.
1 lap around Bde-Makaska is my limit. That's because I can keep my attention for 25 to 30 minutes, and Bde-Makaska is a perfect 5K, and that's what I'm dialed into. But it always impresses me, people who can commit to doing these longer runs. And I think we are going to touch on this a little bit later, just this idea that you started barely running a mile, and now you're doing this, and at the beginning you said that there's no limits to what we can do. So I'm very excited to have you on to talk about this here. You're also a new business owner. Tell us a little bit about transitioning into this new role, because part of our theme here this season is reinventing ourselves. So I imagine being a business owner is part of a reinvention for you.
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say it was kind of an unexpected one. So I've actually, my wife and I have co-owned a personal training business now for, gosh, it's going to be the last 8 years. So that was something that we've been into for quite a while, and I think we'll talk about that a little later. But just this past May, I became a gym owner. A good friend of mine, a guy named Mark Johnson, who founded Performance Running and really started this place, approached me, and he was looking to kind of move on to some bigger and better things with his life. And the gym was kind of holding him back from really living that life to the fullest. So he was looking to transition it to somebody who he knew would take good care of it. And him and I had become good friends over the last few years. And I was a very committed member as well as a business partner, because our personal trainers had trained at the gym for quite a while.
That's 3 Click Fitness, correct?
Correct. Yep. So we decided to make the purchase, and honestly, it was when we first decided to do it, I thought, wow, buying a gym in the middle of COVID, this is probably the stupidest thing I could ever do.
I like brave. Let's say brave.
Yeah, you were brave.
But man, the passion for running and for this community that we have at Performance Running, it would not let me say no. No matter how many times I ran the numbers, no matter how much of a insurmountable mountain it initially looked like to get things where I wanted them to be, I could not bring myself to say no. I love the community we have there, and it's something special, and it's something that I'm really proud to be able to continue to carry on.
And I'm proud to be a member of Performance Running Gym. I have been a member for a few years now, and you're right. Mark is just one of the nicest human beings that's ever existed on this planet. He's such a wonderful person. And to see what he started and what you have grown here in the short time, you guys purchased it over the summer in May, correct?
Yeah, beginning of May.
Yeah, and you really, the two of you have done such a great job, you and Isabel. What is it like running a business with your wife?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been doing it for a while now with 3 Click Fitness. So she joined the 3 Click Fitness team back in 2017. So I had purchased 3 Click Fitness from my former business partner who had owned it outright initially in 2016, and she joined the team in 2017. And she has a skill set and a gift for working with people. She's just a phenomenal people person, a phenomenal communicator. She's got gifts that I will never have, and we kind of complete one another in terms of a full spectrum, set of business owners, because I've got a lot of the kind of behind the scenes skills and the skills to grow a business and manage a business. And she's got those skills to grow the community and talk to people and get that kind of interpersonal side of things. That's so important, not only from the customer side, but also from the perspective of our employees. I mean, she's just so great in managing our team. She manages our training team now. So yeah, it's honestly, it has its challenges. There's no doubt that there are days where we both come home and it's hard to not talk about work when we really do need to not talk about work. But at the same time, I can't imagine somebody better to be running these businesses with, because she kind of completes a piece of the puzzle that I can't dream of completing myself.
It's funny you say that, because my wife and I are like that too. She has these skills that I just don't have in parenting too, even. She just seems to come up with these ideas and I'm like, gosh, that just makes so much sense. You're a natural at this, but I can relate in that my wife's the same way.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, finding what you're really good at. Not that we shouldn't explore things that we're not good at. We want to get out of our comfort zone sometimes, but when it comes to your job, you want to find that spot where you've got a gift and really use that to its fullest, and bring in some other people that have gifts that complement yours that can help you grow and thrive.
So I like that you said that grow and thrive, because as we get older, we sometimes have a tendency to grow out because fitness isn't as much of a priority for whatever reason. We can always find excuses. And we want to make sure that as we talk about this idea of reinventing ourselves, just how important it is to make sure that we maintain our fitness and our health. So what we want to do is we want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue talking to Aaron Boike from 3 Click Fitness and Performance Run Gym about how we can put our healthiest foot forward as we navigate midlife. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. If you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, giving our show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words helps us on our quest to reach the top of the podcast charts. Finally, since you can't make a mixtape for your friends and loved ones like you used to do, share this podcast with them instead. We hope our experiences resonate with others and inspire people to live their best lives. Thanks again. And now, let's take a minute to be present with our breath. If you're listening somewhere safe and quiet, close your eyes and slowly inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do that one more time. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and open your eyes. You feel better? We certainly hope so. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We are here with personal trainer and gym owner Aaron Boike of 3 Click Fitness and Performance Running Gym. And we talked earlier this season with Greg Scheinman, and he has the 6 Fs. And 2 of the 6 Fs are fitness and food. And I feel like as we get older, it's tough to manage our diet. It's tough to manage our fitness, our health. And so we wanted to bring Aaron on here today to talk about how we can navigate our health and our fitness as we get older. So Aaron, you have an interesting story about how you got into fitness. And I asked you before we got on air, I hope this wasn't an insult, because I know you come from a powerlifting background. I wouldn't say you look like a traditional powerlifter. So can you talk about how you got into powerlifting and how that transitioned into being a runner and an endurance athlete?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like I told you when we were off air, I think it would actually be more of an insult if you told me I did look like a powerlifter, because it's hard to look like a powerlifter and run 100 miles in the mountains. And, that really wouldn't work too great. So yeah, my fitness journey actually, it kind of starts back when I was a kid. I grew up a pretty chubby kid and a chubby adolescent, and really felt out of control. I felt like I had no control over my body. Most of the people in my family were very overweight, and I just assumed that was going to happen to me too. Like, I had just accepted it. And then, one day I kind of just decided I kind of want girls to like me. Like, that was literally what I thought. And I'm like, well, I should probably start trying to see if there is anything that I can do about this. And I started with just 1 walk a day. That was literally all I did. After dinner every day, I would go for a walk. Sometimes it was 20 minutes. Sometimes it was 30 minutes. I think when I started, it was like 10 minutes at a time. It was just trying to get moving. And that's something I'd never done before. And then, after that, I actually, just walking alone, had ended up losing about 50 pounds. And then took about another 25 off over the next 6 months, and kind of got down to the point where I was really skinny. So I went from being really fat to really skinny, and found out that, both feel about the same. It doesn't feel good to be really fat. It also doesn't feel really good to be really skinny and be out of shape. Like, no matter what, if you're out of shape, it doesn't feel good, whether you're skinny, fat, anywhere in between. So I figured that out at that point, that, if I wanted to feel good, I had to actually work to get in shape, not just control my weight. I had to actually work to get in shape. So started lifting at the gym. Eventually, I really fell in love with fitness at that point, because I figured out a way to kind of feel like I had this control over my body and how I felt about myself that I'd never had as a child and as an adolescent. And long story short, ended up managing a local 24/7 gym. Met a colleague there that was really into powerlifting. He was actually one of the best in the state, and ended up working out with his crew a little bit and really falling in love with powerlifting. Powerlifting was a way for me to kind of compete with myself. I grew up never playing sports, never doing athletics. So to have this vehicle where I could measure this continuous improvement, it was really empowering, and I loved it. Eventually, I kind of fell out of love with powerlifting just because of the aches and pains and stuff you just shouldn't feel as a 22 or 23-year-old. And shortly thereafter, ended up meeting a personal training client. I'd become a personal trainer during this whole time period. Ended up meeting a personal training client that was training for a 100-mile ultramarathon. And one day I just asked if I could go on a run with him. His guy named is Tony, good friend of mine. And went on a run with him, went on a 20-miler and fell in love. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something I could actually do.
Wait, your first run was a 20-miler?
It wasn't my first run. I had run, a 10K with a couple clients before, but it was by far my biggest run. I had never run more than 10 miles at that point. And I remember the run fondly. It was actually myself, my friend Tony, and another colleague of mine named Jess. And we just decided one day we were going to go for a 20-miler up the loose line. And we didn't really know if it was going to work or not. And it did. I was really sore the next day, but we got it done. So I asked if I could go along again next week. And that's how it all started.
Did you feel what I keep hearing is a runner's high as you were going on this? Or was it more of a, this fucking sucks at some point?
Very much, this fucking sucks. But, I enjoy pushing myself. I enjoy pushing the boundaries of my comfort zone. So at the same time, it sucked and physically was a huge challenge. On the other hand, it was remarkably empowering. I just ran 20 miles. That's, to go from a point where I had literally not run more than a mile 2 years prior to running 20 miles with a friend. That was a big deal.
So Brian and I are older than Aaron. Aaron is 33. We are not. But just out of curiosity, it sounds like you changed your approach to fitness. And that's something that I think I have a hard time letting go of, because I feel like I'm still exercising the same way I did 20 years ago. And though there are bread and butter exercises, I feel like there's the core 6 styles of exercise when it comes to strength training and hypertrophy training that we need to do. How have you shifted your strength training or hypertrophy training over the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you get into endurance sport, your goal is no longer hypertrophy. Hypertrophy, for those of you who don't know, is literally the micro tears that happen in your muscle fibers when you lift heavy weight that actually grow bigger and stronger. And that primarily happens by using the overload principle, lifting more weight than your body is essentially adapted to. And that mostly happens on the down phase of exercises. So there's various ways that you can, maximize hypertrophy. You're never going to get rid of hypertrophy no matter how you lift, but you can maximize it certain ways by lifting in certain rep ranges and with certain tempos and everything like that, and doing certain types of lifts. I'd say largely when I think about the way that you work out, Billy, and the way that I work out, we probably do a lot of the same lifts, but I think about things a little differently. I'm thinking about power production as opposed to hypertrophy. So I focus on the speed of my lifts. I do a lot of plyometrics. I still do those big compound movements though, but instead of focusing on, the traditional 8 to 12 reps that a bodybuilder might, I'm focused on how am I going to maximize my strength and power to complement my running. So I use lower rep ranges, heavy weights, and then plyometric style exercises to really work on building power versus building brute strength and hypertrophy. So it's kind of just it's a different approach, but using a lot of the same movements that I think you would probably be doing at the gym.
So I think it's important for people as they get older to understand why it is so important for them to lift weights and to do strength training, to do hypertrophy training, to do something where you're fatiguing somewhere between, I don't know, like that 6 rep to 15 to 20 rep range, rather than cranking out 20 reps with a 5-pound weight that you could do 100 times. So for people who are approaching midlife and even beyond that, as we get older, why is it so important for them to get involved in some strength training, whether they're doing it 1 day a week, 3 days a week? Talk about losing muscle mass as we age, because that's what happens, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons to specifically do weightlifting as we get older, but one of the biggest ones is just starting at around age 30 for most people. We experience a change in our hormonal profile that no longer supports just keeping the lean mass that we have. If we do nothing, it starts to go away. So we typically will lose about 1% lean muscle mass per year after the age of 30 if we don't do something to stimulate it. And what the research shows is that you're going to get a little bit of retention by doing aerobic exercise, specifically aerobic exercise that has some impact to it. But that's not going to be enough to maintain that lean muscle mass as you get older. You have to specifically do strength training in order to do that. So that's the biggest reason why we have to, is just there's that natural loss in lean muscle tissue. And if you think about the consequences of that, that's going to impact everything else we want to do, in midlife and beyond. If we're losing muscle mass, we're losing strength, we're losing functionality, and that takes away our ability to really enjoy life to the fullest.
And I feel like cardio and aerobic, for people who are new to fitness, that's sort of the gateway into it. But what barriers, what hangups do you see getting in people's way when it comes to the importance of strength training as we get older?
Yeah, so there's a few key ones that we run into a lot running a personal training business. And we see these a little bit at performance running too, but I might say we have a pretty motivated group over there. But the things that we run into the most often is just kind of a lack of direction. We live in a world where there's so many fitness fads out there. There's so many different options to choose from that you can just get decision fatigue. Like, where do I start? What's the best workout? And the truth is, just get started with something. But then a lack of accountability, lack of motivation. So this is where a trainer can really come in handy, is having that partner to keep you accountable, to keep you motivated on your fitness journey. We have so many things in our life that we have to exert our willpower for. So to add on top of that, fitness, that's a real problem for a lot of people, because they're already dealing with managing their willpower for so many other things, that to add fitness on top of that can be a big problem. And that's where having a partner or a trainer can come in handy. Another big issue we run into that I think prevents people from making, real progress if they start their fitness journey is thinking about extrinsic motivations versus intrinsic ones. I'd say that, you can tell when a client is going to be successful because they typically have a motivation that really comes from themselves, something deep in their soul that they really want to accomplish for themselves, versus something that they want to complete or accomplish for somebody else, like their doctor or like to impress their husband or wife. They're not likely to be successful if they're thinking about those extrinsic motivators. You got to have something that's truly internal and important to you in order to succeed. So I'd say that's the second biggest thing we run into, is people not understanding their why, not knowing really why they want to get in shape. They just think they want to get in shape, but they don't have that real reason for it. Obviously there's the constraints on time, family, work obligations that come up in midlife that, we're just busy. We're managing kids, we're managing our jobs. Typically we're making advances in our career during this point in time. So it's just another thing to manage, and constraints on time can be a big thing. And then the last thing that I thought about with this is just the cascade that happens as we get older if we're not physically active. If we spend time, not being physically active, that kind of cascades to a decrease in energy and a decrease in ability to be physically active, which eventually leads to chronic disease, obesity, and it's really hard to get started at that point. Definitely not impossible, but it gets progressively harder to get started.
So then if people get to that point, is that where maybe you would recommend, just like what you did when you were younger, hey, maybe you just need to walk for 10 minutes a day and build that up to 15 minutes a day, just doing something consistent and creating a discipline for it. Because when we had Scott Welly on, who's also an ultra marathoner, he talked about there is a distinct difference between motivation and discipline. So how do you have that conversation around there is a difference between motivation and there's a difference between discipline? Do you set times with your clients and say, hey, when are you actually going to do this? I'm going to hold you accountable to this.
Yeah, I totally agree with your other guest. What was his name again?
Scott Welly.
Scott Welly. Yeah. Motivation tends to be a fleeting thing. So a good example, I just watched this awesome documentary on Netflix called 14 Peaks. If you guys haven't watched it, like, this is amazing what this guy did. He climbed the 14 highest mountains in the world, 18,000 meter mountains in 7 months. And the previous record was almost 8 years. So just an incredible achievement. But either way, like you finish something like that and you're like, damn, I'm going to hit the gym hard tomorrow. You know, this guy's a beast. You just want to, he's just somebody that almost anybody in our position would idolize. But that motivation is going to be fleeting, right? Like you're going to feel that motivation until you hit the gym, and then that workout's going to be hard, and it's going to be hard to keep that up. Or maybe you're motivated for that first week, but it's hard to keep it up long term because that motivation is a fleeting thing. The discipline comes in where you say, it doesn't matter if I'm motivated today or not. This is something that I have on my calendar. This is something that I've committed to. Whether I feel excited about it or not today, I'm going to do it. You know, and I just told you, Billy, as I walked into the studio, I had a super busy day at work today. Felt like there was no chance at me getting a solid workout in, but I just went out for a brisk walk right before we came into the studio. And it's that small little building block that I know is still putting me on the right trajectory towards the big goals that I have. It seems like nothing. I went and walked for 30 minutes, but I know that is a step in the right direction. So I always say that, like what you just said, if you can just start with a walk a day, if you can just start with 10 minutes, if you can hit the gym once a week, do what you can do and get that discipline around that thing that you know you can commit to.
I think that's really important for people to hear that, hey, maybe you didn't get the gym in, maybe you didn't PR anything, but you got a 30-minute walk in and you were active, and being active may translate into being active again tomorrow and again tomorrow and again tomorrow. And wow, that's the hardest piece for me, is the consistency, is to consistently get to the gym. Brian, I know you're in the best shape that you ever had, right? Or you've ever been in. So what is it for you? How do you discipline yourself? How do you stay consistent?
It's the same as Aaron. I need the energy. It's almost counterintuitive. You'd think, oh, I'm moving all the time, my body's going to be tired. That's not the way it works. Once you get started moving, you get more energy from moving. So for me, I need that energy to keep up with my 5-year-old and my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old. I have 3 boys. So that's my main motivation, is just doing it because I feel better when I do it. Same as you. It's just, you get that energy. You're able to do more if you keep your body healthier and you're moving all the time. It feeds itself.
Yeah, it's such a trap to think that you have to have the perfect workout for things to work.
Right.
You just need to get out there and do something.
Do it.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think, too, there's something to be recognized in the rest aspect of it, too, in the recovery aspect after a workout, and that you can't go hard each and every single day. You have to get a good night's sleep. You have to fuel yourself accordingly. Otherwise, you're going to feel sluggish. You might not get back in there the next day just because you feel like shit because you fueled yourself with shit or you got a bad night's sleep. And I think it's okay for people to recognize, too, that, you know what, this just isn't my day, and I am just going to do that 15-minute walk, because if I go and lift a weight right now, I'm going to hurt myself. So I'm glad that you brought that up, that you didn't have time today to get in and do a workout at the gym, and you own a gym, but you were able to say, hey, I'm going to get in a walk for sure. I can at least get in a walk. I imagine going to the gym and working with a trainer, especially if it's something someone has never done before, can be an intimidating experience. And I know you're not doing training anymore, that you own the gym, but you have your trainers at the gym. So walk us through what a pre-screen and a consultation might look like with a trainer.
Yeah, so we really try our best to remove that intimidation factor. And there's a few things that we, of course, have to do. We have to do a brief health history questionnaire. We have to make sure that you're safe to jump into an exercise program. Even if you're not, there's ways around that. 9 times out of 10, the doctor's going to sign with a big smile and say, absolutely, you can work with a personal trainer. But either way, after we get through that simple step, which takes all of about 2 minutes, we really work with the clients on 3 main things. We're going to work with them to establish 3 specific and measurable goals. And we're going to dive into why those goals are important to them. And I think that's where we try to start to discover some of those intrinsic motivators, because a lot of people, they have that surface idea of what their goal is on their mind, but they don't really think about why it is they want to achieve it. When we start listing out the reasons why they want to achieve it and why it's so important to their life, then they start to get really excited about it, and then they can really commit. So that's the first thing we do. We set those 3 specific and measurable goals, and we discover their why. The second thing that we work with them on is we figure out a basic outline of a workout plan that's going to help them achieve their goals based on what they've told us. So we're going to figure out what specifically, kind of paint the picture of what specifically that workout plan would look like. And then we're going to finish with giving our specific recommendations on how a personal trainer can be a part of that plan so that they can have a better results and a better experience and have that motivation, accountability, remove all the guessing and the thinking, which I think holds so many people up. They spend all day thinking about what should I do at the gym. The trainer's going to answer those questions for you. And you have that partner. That is just, I think one of the most important things is to have that partner.
I think that accountability partner piece is important because I used to go to Orange Theory, and I felt like the group atmosphere held me accountable a little bit, and it also pushed me a little bit because I imagine other people are like this. I would look around the room and see who my competition was, and I liked that. But there was also the piece for me because I have my personal training certification too, where I'm like, well, I feel like I'm missing this aspect to my training, so I would kind of couple the two together. So maybe go to Orange Theory once or twice a week and then go to the gym to do hypertrophy or strength training once or twice a week, just to kind of marry those things together. And one thing that you talked about before was you were working with, a high performing athlete as their coach. And I think it's important for people to recognize that even high performers work with a coach in some way. So when you take a look at the benefits of working with a coach, what are those? Why do you think it's important for people of all varying degrees to work with a coach?
The benefit of working with a coach, for me, I actually work with 2 coaches in my life. I work with a business coach, a guy named Troy Schutte, who's a local EOS implementer, done awesome things for our business. And then I also work with a running coach myself. And there's a lot of different elements to why I personally love working with a coach. But one of the best ones is having that outsider perspective, that the perspective on your goals from the outside without the emotional involvement that you have when you try to tackle them yourself. And then there's also the element of taking the guessing and the thinking out of it. When we're in midlife, we're dealing with all of these decisions about our kids, decisions about our work, decisions about how we're going to manage a relationship with our spouse. Like there's all these things that we're thinking about, and it can be overwhelming. And if you're adding on top of that, I want to start a fitness journey, and there's 9 billion options out there and 6 billion exercises I could choose from, that's an overwhelming proposition. So to have somebody there who's kind of doing that legwork for you, thinking about what specifically is going to achieve this person's goals the fastest and the most efficient way, it just takes that burden off of you, and you're doing the right thing. So you're that much more motivated because when you hit the gym or when you hit that run or when you're making that business plan, that it's the right decision because it's been thought through and it's from somebody that you trust.
I'm glad that you mentioned essentially the paradox of choice right there when it comes to being overwhelmed, because you can look on social media and see 8 million workouts, and you graciously let me train at your gym last winter. And my approach was, we're just going to do a strength foundations where we're going to do a squat or a lunge exercise. We're going to do a hip hinge exercise, so like a deadlift or a hip thrust or something along those lines, an upper body push So a bench press or shoulder press and upper body pull, and then we would rotate, and then we would do a carry exercise. So I feel like even if you're new, you can work in those 6 exercises into a workout, and it might only take you then 40, 45 minutes to do a good workout. And if you have a trainer, then they'll be able to say, hey, I'm looking at the way you're moving right here during this workout. Maybe we need to go lighter. Maybe we need to shift here. Maybe we need to not do that exercise at all and move over in this direction here and do something else until we build up the strength or the stamina to move it over here. And I think it's important then for people to recognize what they should be looking for in a trainer. So as an employer, what do you look for in a trainer, and what should people look for in a trainer when they're going to work with someone?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd say one of the things that's led to our success as a business over the last few years with 3Click Fitness and now Performance Running, we actually share a lot of employees between the two businesses, has been that we have the right people. We say it openly, we have the best trainers in the Twin Cities. And what makes for the best trainer? It's not necessarily just the education and credentials. I mean, we got some people on our team with amazing credentials that have really worked hard to advance their careers. But that's not the reason we hired them. The reason we hired them is because they're a personality fit. They match what we're looking for, that we know is going to be able to inspire, motivate, and have a positive affect on our clients. That's the most important thing that you should also be looking for as a consumer when you're looking for a trainer is this person a personality fit? Do I like this person? Can I see myself building a solid rapport with this person? If you say no to that question, you're probably not going to stick with that trainer long term. And you're probably going to have trouble trusting that what they're telling you is in your best interest. The second thing you should look for is make sure that they have an NCCA accredited personal training certification or a degree in a related field. There's so many kind of fake personal training certifications out there. Anybody can go on the internet, spend a weekend, and walk away with a certificate printed off their computer. It doesn't mean anything, though. You want to make sure that you have somebody who's done a legitimate certification. The NCCA is the organization. They have a website. I think it's just ncca.org. And you can look up somebody's certification to find out if it's legitimate or not. And
your ACE certification, correct?
Yeah. And I to be honest with you, American Council on Exercise is great, but I would argue that if they're looking somebody with just an A certification, no experience, no degree, that's probably not enough.
What if they have an NASM certification? Would you say that they have then accomplished the gold standard of certified personal training credentials?
No.
Damn it.
But get some good experience and you're on the right track.
And that's why I appreciated you letting me train at your gym, because I got some experience training with some of the clients there. So thank you very much for that. What else should people look for in a trainer?
Yeah, so I think the last thing, and one that's probably just about as important as the first point of do you like them? Can you see yourself building a rapport with them and having trust in them? Is do they care more about your goals than their own agenda? So fitness is very tribal right now, just like everything in our world. Everything's very tribal right now. Fitness is no exception. And you might go see a trainer who they just train one way. They just, train, based on the big 3 exercises, bench press, deadlift, squat. They just train HIIT style, whatever it is. They might have kind of their own agenda, and that's what they do. I personally really advocate avoiding that, because that might not be where you're at. That might not be the best for your goals, and it probably isn't. So you want to make sure that the trainer you're talking to clearly cares more about your goals and how they're going to help you accomplish your goals than how they're going to put you through this awesome workout that's going to leave you dragging by your ass on the floor.
And I'll give a shout out to one of your trainers, Jacob Oak, because when I came back from my trip, I did not exercise at all. I didn't do a single push-up while I was overseas in Portugal and Spain, but I walked every single day. Like I was walking 35,000 steps. So I was able to, I guess, keep the weight off from whatever I was consuming just because I was walking so much and I was climbing here and there. But I definitely feel not as toned, right? I take great pride in the strength that I had developed over the years, and now I've lost a lot of that. And because I was out of sorts and I wasn't consistent with working out, I'm like, I'm losing this motivation to go to the gym, because I know that if I pick up a weight, it's going to be a significantly less weight than what I was lifting before. And you have Saturday group classes that are free to members and free to first timers. And Jacob is one of the coaches at those Saturday classes. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and do the Saturday class because I just need someone to walk me through this and guide me through this. And Jacob is a great young man. I love working with him, and he fits for me. He's a great personality fit. He's accredited. And when I told him, like, hey, you know, I don't want to do a whole lot of overhead stuff because I have some issues with my neck, he was great at making sure that the exercises fit to what it was that I was there to do. And it was a great workout.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, Jacob's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, for you runners out there, Aaron is going to talk a little bit more about why it's important for you as runners to make sure that you are lifting weights and to avoid that stigma of being bulky as a runner. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thanks for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We will do our best to put out new content every Wednesday to help get you over the midweek hump. If you'd like to contact us, or if you have suggestions about what you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Check out the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. Oh, and don't forget to show yourself some love every now and then, too. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We are here with certified personal trainer and business owner, gym owner, Aaron Boike. And we've been having a great conversation here about the importance of fitness as we get older. We want to shift gears here a little bit because Aaron does do a lot of ultra running, and he does a lot of coaching with ultra runners. And if there are ultra runners out there, or there are people who are interested in getting into ultra running, we encourage you to contact Aaron. Now, Aaron, there seems to be this stigma with runners that lifting weights will hurt their running by making them too bulky. I remember talking to a marathon runner one time and asking him, you know, hey, do you ever lift weights? And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh, you ever go into the gym like once or twice and just do some strength training? And he'd say, no, that would get in the way of my running. So he was running like 6 days a week. And I've just over time, I've heard that from runners that no, they don't want to go in and lift. And I'm just wondering, what advice would you give to the running community out there when it comes to that mindset?
Yeah, I'd say that's an old school mentality. Your friend who runs marathons, he might be stuck in the past because strength training is largely accepted by the running community at this point. You know, if you look at any of the elite runners out there, they work with a strength coach. It's a piece of their program. And that's for a myriad of reasons. And, you know, the research of yesteryears was based on this principle that endurance athletes should lift light weights for high repetitions because they're endurance athletes. They should be working, you know, for over a long period of time. And no wonder they didn't get results because that's essentially doing the same thing that you do when you go out and run. You know, if you're going out and lifting 30 repetitions of a squat, you're working your legs much like you do when you're out running. You're not building any additional capacity. So since then, the research has shifted to what happens if we have runners lift for power, if we have them lift heavy weights for low repetitions, or we have them do plyometric or jumping exercises focused on power. And the research has been remarkable. Not only does it improve VO2 max, which is kind of the ultimate measure of how, you know, what your capacity as an aerobic or endurance athlete is, but it also helps to build more power and muscular efficiency and ward off injury. And any runner knows that one of the biggest plagues that runners have, particularly long distance runners, is injury. In an average year, over 70% of runners are going to end up with an injury of some sort. And that injury is going to put them on the couch for a while, and that's going to hinder their progress. So just by strength training alone, you can ward off a lot of those injuries because you're strengthening your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, and your joints so that they can handle the pressures of your sport. And on top of that, like we talked about, if you improve your power through your musculature, that power translates into your running. You become more efficient, you become faster, and you become more economical.
What importance does the role of stretching and even recovery lifts like face pulls or band walks or anything like that, what role do those play? I imagine that we have listeners out there who do yoga, and this is not, I think yoga is very underrated in strength training and maybe even in the runner world. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but at times I think it's overrated because we will hear people do yoga 5 days a week, but they don't incorporate any strength training. And I feel like we need to blend kind of all these modalities together. And I'm curious what you think about that. Am I off base on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of it comes down to what's your time commitment? What can you get away with there? And you have to pick what is going to produce the most improvement for you based on your life and what you want to accomplish. So for some people, that might be yoga. If you're getting into running and you're incredibly immobile and that's hindering your performance, well, then yeah, a yoga class on a weekly basis or even a couple times a week is probably a great thing to do. But if you're looking at injury prevention or just becoming a more functional athlete, that's where the strength training is really going to shine as well. So yeah, I think it all comes down to time. When you're thinking about all these different things that you could do, think about the ones that are going to be the most impactful for you. And that's the place to start.
So what does your training then look like now? Because like we said, you came from a powerlifting background. So I don't imagine that you're deadlifting 475 anymore, anything like that. So what does your training regimen look like?
Yeah. So, in the fitness world, we're kind of taught that endurance and strength are on this continuum, with endurance being on one side, strength being on the other. And it's hard to maximize improvements in both at the same time. So when I'm working out at the gym, my goal is not necessarily to get back to that 500-pound deadlift that I had in my early 20s. My goal is to complement my running, as I'm sure most of the people that come to performance running, that's probably what their goal is too. So on a weekly basis, my program, I work with a coach, like I said, and it varies wildly depending on what I'm training for and the time of year. So right now I'm getting ready for a 100-miler in February and a marathon in the spring. And I have to think about both of these things at the same time because I have to, work on my up-tempo runs and running quickly and turnover and leg speed, getting ready for this marathon.
Just real quick, what's the recovery difference between a 100-miler and a 26-miler? Do you have to take a certain amount of time off after both of them?
That's a good question. I like that.
This could be a whole can of worms, but I'll try to make it short and sweet. So 9 times out of 10, that person that just finished the marathon and was running really hard for 26.2 is going to be sore as hell the next day. The person that ran the 100-miler, they might not be nearly as sore. So the physical recovery, you'd actually be surprised at least for experienced ultra runners, is far less for a 100-miler versus a marathon.
Wow.
It's because the intensity level is so much lower for a 100-miler. You can't go out and, run 6-minute miles for 100 miles, but you can do that for a marathon, right? So it's just that you're running at such a small portion of your total max capacity to be able to run that kind of distance. So you're in some cases doing less ultimate damage on your muscle fibers. So there's less of a physical recovery. Now, after a 100-miler, there's a whole nother can of worms that is the mental recovery from such a massive event, from such a massive undertaking. And there's recovery that we don't really completely understand yet, systemic fatigue that goes deeper than just muscular fatigue or tiredness. You can think of some of the long haul COVID symptoms. A lot of those kind of carry over in your first weeks after a 100-miler. And I've experienced all of that even just this year, even to the point of dealing with some depression after the Aaaro 100. Like, it is really strange when you train for something this intensive, this large. In this case, this is a race that takes most people over 2 days to complete. It took me 46 hours. And when you're out there for that long in the mountains, subjecting your body to this, something that's this intense, there's a tremendous mental and systemic fatigue that I don't think we completely understand at this point.
That could have to do with the dopamine release because of the run. It could, a lot of things going on there maybe, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt you're messing with your hormones and everything. I never said it was healthy, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, I think that maybe brings up the other side of things, because I was just reading an article about the role exercise plays in alleviating anxiety and depression. So I was wondering if you could speak to that. Like, you were kind of speaking to on the other end of it, that after the training is done and after that long run is done, that you maybe are feeling these emotions. But on the flip side of that, when you're routinely working out, it can alleviate these feelings of anxiety and depression. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something I'm really passionate about, because I have people close to me in my life that deal with pretty major anxiety and depression. And yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about it that specifically when you get consistent with an activity or exercise routine, there's a tremendous ability to kind of overcome these feelings of depression and anxiety and kind of manage them. It's not necessarily a cure-all, but it definitely helps you manage them. And there's several reasons for that. There's the actual dopamine and endorphin release that you get from your workout. And also there's that commitment to a positive thing, something that you really have control over, that if nothing more, I'm going to take this half hour every day to go out and go for my walk, or I'm going to hit the gym. And having that positive, consistent element in your life, I think, can really be a massive help for people that are struggling with anxiety, depression, and mental illness.
I could kind of relate to that today, because I was hyper today, and I don't know if I was stressed out. I'm just anxious all the time. So I was at someone's house and I said, I need to go to the gym, because if I stay here in this current state, I am going to drive you nuts. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, went to performance running gym, did my workout and felt great. And it cleared my head a little bit. And I like that you talked about how exercise and working out is a positive progress in some way, where you see like you're doing something that is creating growth within ourselves. And it's important for us to be continually growing.
Yeah. When you think about, as an average person going into midlife, all the obligations and everything that we have, there's so many things that we do for other people. There's so many things that we commit to for other people, for our business, for our kids, whatever it might be. To have that thing that is yours, that you have control over, that, and it's a positive thing. It's something nobody's going to look down on you for taking a half hour to work out. Everybody knows that's going to help you in every other aspect of your life. So it's that thing that you get for you, and it's a positive thing, and it helps you, kind of like you just said, Billy, hit that reset button. I mean, that was half the reason I went out for a walk before I came in here today, is I wanted to be able to give a good interview, and I wanted to be relaxed for it. And my mind was moving at 500 miles an hour when I pulled in the parking lot here, because I had a crazy day. So I just wanted to slow that day down a notch a little bit, get out, move a little, listen to some good music, and come back in here with a clear mind.
Well, if that isn't reason enough for people to put their healthiest foot forward, I don't know what is. Aaron, we want to thank you so much for being here today. You can contact Aaron at 3clickfitness.com. You can follow him on Instagram at TrainerOnTheRun. You can follow 3Click Fitness at 3ClickFitness on Instagram. You can follow Performance Running Gym at Performance Run Gym on Instagram. Aaron, thank you so very much for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So for Aaron, for Brian, this is Billy. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Take care, friends.